Welcome to this webinar. I'm just about to share my screen and we can get started. So this webinar is all about how we can supercharge your strategy in 60 minutes, powered by Trendtracker. I will explain 3 specific use cases where AI can augment really strategic research or strategic planning, popular use cases. So my name is Vincent. For those who do not know me, I've put my credentials here on the screen. You can also take a screenshot of this QR code to link up with me on LinkedIn. And for the rest, let's just get started. So what I have in mind for you today is basically briefing you about who we are as a company, first of all, for those who do not know us. Secondly, I will just jump into live demos of some of these supercharged use cases. The first use case will be about how can you turn a lengthy, time-intensive process like horizon scanning and pestle analysis into an analysis that can support you in hours or even minutes. The second use case is really about digging deep into specific technologies and really understanding at a deeper level how these technologies are impacting you as a company. And then the third one is really zooming in on what does that mean for you and how can you get from, let's say, typical PowerPoint intensive strategic briefs to instant reports, instant strategic briefs that give you all the inspiration in a continuous and real-time way. We should have plenty of room for Q&A voila, let me just get started. First of all, to explain a little bit what Trendtracker is. Trendtracker is actually our AI-powered strategic intelligence platform. It's just a way to continuous and automatically scan for external change, external trends, map that onto your specific context, and really understand how these trends are impacting you, why they are impacting you, and how you can anticipate to that change. So really, the mission that we're in is about automating as much as we can of the traditional strategic practice workflows, and by doing so, enable analysts, enable decision makers, enable teams that typically report out to C-level and boardroom to remain competitive and relative by focusing on future-proof strategies. Trendtracker is a B2B SaaS platform. You can also see the link here if you have never visited our website before. Now, on the company itself, who we are, we position ourselves as an AI-powered strategic intelligence company, meaning that we are a bunch of people working heavily on foresight, strategic planning, but a combination of equally AI engineers, full-stack developers that use new tactics, new methodologies to basically redefine how you do strategic research. So for us, it's all about 100% AI and data-driven tactics and methodologies to redefine the field of strategic research. Now, Trendtracker itself has won several awards in different industries for our proprietary technology, and it's all about collecting worldwide news and then using that to continuously monitor trends and deliver tailored strategic advice in an automated and personalized way. And by doing so, we basically enable decision makers from global leading companies to really have that competitive edge, to really stay relevant and able to anticipate a fast-changing world. Now, here you see a selection of a couple of our clients that we are supporting in the last 4.5 years that we exist. What I want to explain here really is that Trendtracker is an industry-agnostic solution. So it can work for any company, any industry, and these are just a couple of brands that we have the opportunity of collaborating with and using our platform Trendtracker to just stay relevant and make better decisions about the future direction of their companies. We also have some formal and informal academic partners, and we also originated more from the academic world and are active in a couple of vertical communities, whether it's in finance or AI or specific niche communities. Now, why can we work for these big companies? If we would have to say what are like the challenges that they come to us, and hopefully that they can see that Trendtracker can alleviate some of their pains. It's basically that the world is changing fast, and companies understand that traditional planning, traditional strategic planning, set strategies on 3 years, 5 years, that's actually not more inadequate today. So what we see are three big challenges. The first one is the speed of global change, the strategy, the innovation cycles. They are becoming much shorter to deal with that global, whether it's macro geopolitical, macroeconomic uncertainty, whether it's climate change, whether it's technology advancements. That means that thinking in the long term for these companies becomes much more strategic and relevant than it used to be, because they need to be agile and they need to already anticipate what will happen in the long term and have a plan for potential different futures that might disrupt them. Another big challenge is that we see is that once you have teams that are focusing on that longer term, once you have foresight teams, strategic planning teams, innovation teams that have that key responsibility, that they have to deal with an immense and ever-growing flood of data, news, and that they're practically impossible to stay on top of all that news and respond effectively and fast. And a third one is basically the inefficiency of strategy. Most of the teams that we work with, they come to us and they say, can you augment our workflows? Can you help us? Because the typical analysis is time and effort intensive, which also costs a lot of money if you go for external support on that. And it's always difficult to get that quantitative, unbiased insights. And even if you're doing this kind of analysis on a yearly, quarterly, semesterly basis, the pace of change today makes this just an inadequate practice. You need to be much more agile, much more in a continuous strategic planning flow than ever before. And you don't have to believe me. We see a lot of these reports coming out from consultants. This is one from KPMG that explains just that. 72% of all C-level executives say that the acceleration requires them to go from set long-term strategies to a more agile, continuous way of strategic planning. They also mapped that onto a couple of big disruptions. And here you can actually see that they expect significant impact on the technology, geopolitical, economical, workforce, and environmental aspect. But for most of these disruptive fields, they feel unprepared to be able to deal with that change. And there's also another McKinsey study that I typically use in these keynotes. It's an older study by McKinsey, but McKinsey has actually proven that if you're able to do just that, if you're able to have that long-term strategic thinking integrated into the DNA of your company, if you're able to move from set strategies to continuous way of doing strategy, that you can outperform your competitors on almost any financial metric, including company revenue, with up to 47%. So this is moving high up the CEO and boardroom level agenda to be able to do just that. Now, and this is really where our vision comes in. The vision about Trendtracker is that we're creating an advanced AI strategic analyst for teams that support executives and boards. We're basically redefining how strategy is done by fusing AI with the traditional strategic practices. So you can think of our AI analyst as a way to have an always-on radar that continuously can scan your horizon, your external environment for potential disruptions, and deliver a continuous flood of strategic tailored advice. So it's about understanding the past, analyzing external environments, monitoring and forecasting signals and trends to be able to understand and assess alternative futures, and then be able to benchmark what you need to do and what the causality is of your actions in all of these specific cases. So this is really the added value of Trendtracker in a nutshell. And how we see that it can support you and how it's augmenting your workflows is that it can drastically increase the performance of your teams, because you will be able to move faster while saving time, effort, and money in doing the kind of research. It's not even times 10 in efficiency. It can go to times 100 in efficiency. It also supports you in removing human bias, because we're all biased by our own information bubble, and having this objective data-driven insights will help you to make objective decisions for the future. And also our AI analyst, of course, doesn't really have to sleep. So it continuously scans global change so that you will be able to sleep well yourself, because you will never miss any risk or opportunity and be disrupted overnight. So that's really the vision that we have set 4 years ago for what we are trying to accomplish with Trendtracker, and how we are dealing with that, the process or the underlying idea of how we are adding value to our customers is basically that, first of all, we monitor a lot of data sources. It's all curated data sources that we spend a lot of time and effort in capturing, but it's all about monitoring change at a holistic level. Academic news, business news, mass media news, company news, investment news, startup data, all that kind of information that we need to extract to be able to understand how trends or how specific drivers of change impact companies. And our proprietary model is really a combination of state-of-the-art, different kind of AI technologies that is able to get the information out of all that news. So we have built a model that is able to derive the trends, link it to you as a company, link it to your industry, understand all kinds of strategic actions that other companies are doing with that, and build that kind of intelligence layer on top. By doing so, we can support different workflows that strategy teams might have, whether it's trend analysis, horizon scanning, risk sensing, market intel, and a lot of these other typical use cases that are heavy, intensive in time and effort. And what makes us unique is that we have a model that is able to tailor all these insights specifically to your context, so to you as a company. It's not a one-size-fits-all model. It's a model that will tell you, with your specific industry activity, with your product, with your regional presence, with your specific strategic objectives, that kind of tailoring will be put into this model so that we can actually advise you at a personal level. Now, we see ourselves as a new wave of innovation, a new wave of technology. If you look at the past, how this typical work was done, it was a human analyst world. And the business model was really, the more people you scale in that model, the more and better insights that you will be producing. But that's a limited model. And by now, we are coming in a new era of technology change, a new way of these S-curves, where we see that AI agents or AI analysts will do the same kind of analysis, but then 100 times faster and cheaper than typical human analysts. And we see ourselves as one of those new breed of AI-driven tools that are at your disposal to really make a difference. Now, you don't have to believe me. This is one of our biggest ambassadors, Hans de Kuyper, CEO of Ageas Group, a Belgian insurance company active mostly in Europe and Asia. And I once did a podcast with him and he explained it quite well. He said, Trendtracker helps us it serves as a good guide on the long term. It helps us steer through an ever-growing maze of options and complexity in a fast-changing world. He also explained that we will never replace their internal expertise and knowledge about their company in the market, but it's really augmenting them and giving them direction. We are been working for Ageas for the last, ever since we started, the last 4 or 5 years now, and we are fueling their strategic cycles with insights and direction so that they can be competitive in the future. Now, there are a couple of these specific use cases that I've mentioned that Trendtracker can help you solve, or parts of it can help you solve. I will zoom in on a couple because we don't have the time to basically touch on each and every one. So I will zoom in on some of these most popular ones and maybe also explain 4 use cases which are linked to these popular use cases that I will explain. The first one is really the one on Ageas, where, like I explained, we support them with an integrated process. So Trendtracker is the core of their long-term thinking process. It integrates AI-driven trend scouting at a macro level, so at a pastel level, combined with human intelligence. And the combination of both helps them give priorities onto which trends they should focus on and act on today, which they should postpone, and which they should already should be doing some deep dives on, because they see some signals of change that might disrupt them the next coming years. So we're been integrating and professionalizing their foresight process actually for the last 4 years. And it's still one of the success stories of really creating a culture of future thinking and integrating that mindset into the DNA of every individual at Ageas. A second one is more for risk teams. We work with Umicore more on the risk sensing side of things. Risk kind of relates to trends, but then again, also a little bit different. So for Umicore, we have digitized their risk sensing framework into our platform Trendtracker, enabling them to continuously assess these risks that are happening in their space. Another popular use case is about weak signal detection, early signal detection. So really understanding change before competitors, understanding and recognizing patterns of change that might disrupt specific consumer patterns. And this is actually what we're doing for PepsiCo at a global level. We've also digitized their trend framework, but we're continuously scanning for weak early signals of change, manifestations of what the food and beverage landscape could look like in the next coming 5 or 10 years into the future. And this is also an integrated bi-yearly process where we update them with all these insights. And then I cannot disclose the name of the last use case. It's a global, one of the big investment funds at a global level. And there we support their investment foresight. It's a little bit the same, but these guys invest in all the big companies at the global level. And they really want to understand that long-term change. How is it potentially disruptive, and how should they switch or shift their investment portfolios to specific teams or niches that are going on. So these are just 4 use cases that we enable with Trendtracker. Again, there are a lot more of these use cases. Now, what I've prepared for you today is actually a fictive case. It's a demo case. I'm going to act if I would work as a global insurance company, and my role would be strategy analyst, and I get a request from my VP strategy. That's basically the setup of today. My VP strategy is asking me, Vincent, can you perform a broader horizon scan or do a pestle analysis, is a different wording, on all kinds of macro forces that impact us, that impact the insurance industry. Secondly, he's asking me can you zoom in on one of those most impactful macro forces and really do a trend scouting analysis, so deep diving onto one of those macro forces. And in the end, what he wants is a strategic brief about which of these trends are changing fast over the course of a couple of months and what they need to know and how they can act upon that change. So it's a 3-level use case. These are the 3 use cases: horizon scanning, technology scouting, instant strategic briefing. And this is all like a cascade of events that I will demo now. So let me just zoom in or go to the platform itself. So for this, I have, of course, prepared a couple of what we call trend boards. And a trend board is actually acting as a trend report or a trend dashboard. It combines a couple of trends grouped into a couple of clusters that support a specific strategic challenge. So Trendtracker enables you to monitor any kind of domain in any industry. It can be about a domain like monitor the future of aging, monitor future of agriculture, circular economy, energy and utilities, decarbonization, tech, you name it. Basically, any domain can be monitored with Trendtracker. This is just my small demo environment that we typically use as a first demo for our customers. But to give you an insight onto these specific use cases, so the first supercharging use case is about, can you do a horizon scan in insurance, give me really the macro forces that are impactful on insurance, and give me some key takeaways that I need to know as an analyst reporting out to my VP strategy. Now for that, we have a lot of these predefined, curated boards already. And for that, we have a global steep monitor that we have mapped onto insurance. And this is already, let's say, if we would become a customer of ours, doesn't really matter in which industry, this is the level of horizon scan that you need to do. You can basically have instant access to something similar. So it's not days, weeks, months, it's minutes to get access to all this kind of information. Now, how this steep monitor is really structured, and it's always the same with Trendtracker, we allow you to have a tailored structure built in to this trend board. In this case, it's a steep, meaning societal, technology, environmental, economical, political analysis. And this is also the structure that is pre-built in here. So how this model works is that we have the landscape. Beneath the landscape, we have these macro forces, and this is actually all predefined into this board. So we have mapped the global macro forces impacting all kinds of industries and mapped it basically onto insurance. And what you then get is basically a high volume of trends kind of radar that continuously assesses all these macro forces specifically on your industry. So this is just a radar view where you can see a couple of scorings. I will explain that a little bit later, but this gives you a larger overview of how all these macro forces are actually scored and growing or declining on your industry, mapping it on a global level. And then you can actually just see, for instance, if I would look at the technology landscapes, the interesting macro forces that are impactful for insurance are about cybercrime, AI, future of computing, extended reality, automation, and so on. So this is really how you can then have that holistic view and use that trend radar in your communication about this is the world, this is how these macro forces are impactful on our specific case. Now, there is also a way of browsing this radar and go to the details, but let me show you another way of browsing. So the logical flow is that you would report out, okay, we have this steep monitor, it's impactful. You can see at a landscape level, a scoring on a scale from 0 to 10, and immediately you would see which of these landscapes are more trending than others and which ones are showing more growth signals than others. And then you can actually zoom in onto each and every underlying cluster here. So what typically happens at this horizon scan level is that you say, okay, I think I also have a slide on this here. What's in this board is actually the steep landscape. The steep landscape is made up out of all these macro forces that are predefined and we know have an impact on insurance. And then you can zoom in which of these macro forces are actually my top clusters, meaning which of these macro forces show the highest strength on insurance in this case, or how are they changing, 1, 2, or 3 arrows up or down. And this already is useful at this level to report where you can say, okay, in insurance, most trending theme is cybercrime, followed by climate change, changing finance, business models, AI is going mainstream, and so on. Another way of doing is that you want to see which ones are changing fast. So not only looking at strength, but also just understand which of these underlying clusters here are actually changing fast. And then you would see that it's mostly about geopolitical escalations, sustainable or green economy, food innovation, climate change, AI is going mainstream. These are like your fast moving themes that you can assess automatically. So that's already a differentiating view that you can give. And then typically what happens is that you can zoom in specifically onto all these clusters, and these clustered macro forces, they are actually fueled by underlying actual trends that also are scored on the insurance industry. And here you can do similar signals. You can say, okay, within this AI is going mainstream macro force, which of these actual trends are really driving that macro force? So which have the highest scores, or which ones are growing fast? And of course, the actual AI models then go a level deeper, and actually you can click on it, but I will show you that later, what happens if you go to the lowest level of analysis. So really, to recap this, you can go from a landscape level to a macro level. And what's really missing here is cases, stories, inspiration points about, yeah, but how is AI is going mainstream now actually impactful on insurance to close your horizon scan kind of analysis. And this is really where our news feature kicks in. It's, you can think of it as a specific or Google newsfeed on steroids, where you can actually filter out onto the structure of your board. So what I've now done is I flagged AI is going mainstream, but also all these underlying trends, and it will look for news specifically in my context. So what I value the most about all these underlying signals. And then you can then see some use cases, and there's also pre-filtered use cases in here. Let's say you want to report out of what competitors are doing with some AI trends related to your industry. You would get actually to the kind of headlines that you can instantly use into your analysis. But there's a lot of these specific pre-filtered news feeds in here. Let's say you're more interested in what's happening at a startup level, or product launches, or what's being written from a consultancy perspective. So what are all these reports from the Big Four and other consulting companies that report out on this specific or on these specific themes, which you can then just click on, and it would take you, of course, to that specific report. Again, also regulation news, market forecast data, investment news. That's all the kind of relevant manifestations that you can find to really fuel your analysis. And this is then basically the first use case, and how you can then typically report that onto slides if you would go to your VP strategy is using the same narrative. We're monitoring all these macro forces impactful on insurance. We have a radar that is continuously scoring and assessing all these macro forces so that we have a pretty good idea which of these are showing considerable strength and which ones are growing fast. We can zoom in on which ones are really the top ones or the fastest growers. And then equally, we can zoom in onto a specific macro force even deeper, get all the insights we need. For instance, what's the impact or why this cluster matters to insurance, key metrics, some touch points or news stories, highlighting some of these most top trending trends within this cluster, just seeing visually how they evolve through time, mapped onto the insurance industry. And this is already at a macro level, the kind of analysis that we typically see originating from horizon scanning activities, leveraging in this case on Trendtracker. Now, the second use case brings me to a follow-up discussion. Once you would show this to your VP strategy, or let's say to C-level or boardroom level, and they say, okay, great, and now we want to really understand in depth what this AI is going mainstream macro force means to us. So what if we do a deep dive, a technology scouting in this case, only on AI trends in insurance? How would that play out? Now, this is the second Supercharge use case. Typically, again, a really time intensive process. You need to digest all the specific reports, all the specific tech sites to be able to do that kind of analysis. Trendtracker makes it a lot more easy because our discover features allows you to just type in a query or a prompt where you say, I'm interested in AI trends impacting insurance. There is a recommendation system behind that that would give you the relevant trends because it knows who you are as a company first. It would enhance the radar creation in minutes. So you would see a similar board, but created for you specifically in minutes, which gives you instant access to the kind of inspiration you would need. And that's really the second Supercharge use case. Let's do a technology scouting on AI trends impacting insurance. So the second one would actually also be a visualization where, in this case, let me go back. I already created it, but in minutes you would be able to access a similar board like that. And again, if I would go to the radar, or maybe first zoom into the structure, you would see that the structure of this board has changed. It's not at a higher steep level. It's much more on a specific AI kind of level where your clusters are actually logical teams that, again, group a couple of trends, in this case, AI trends, that are specific for that team. And then the radar itself works in a similar way. You can see your teams, you can see all the underlying trends. And as you can see here, it's much more at a detail level, at a sub-trend level, almost, where you can see which of these trends are actually high trending with fast growth, or some of these that are actually also growing, but less trending today. And this is already, again, the highest level of how you can start and do this kind of analysis. But again, Let me start from the summary page. So what you would get if you would want to assess future of AI in insurance in minutes, similar flow. You would see the clusters, the top clusters. If you want to see which ones are growing fast, you could see these ones. So apparently most of these AI clusters are changing fast in insurance, and from a, let's say, top trending, the applied AI in finance is your top cluster, followed by conversational and language AI, and so on. So this is really, again, how you can drill down to the interesting insights. And let me now maybe zoom in on one of these things. Let me take one that's potentially less obvious, maybe the last one here. Let's zoom in on ethics and governance in AI. Okay, so within ethics and governance in AI, what would happen is you would get that cluster score telling you it's a 4.9. It's a fast changing cluster, meaning that there are some of these underlying trends that are grouped and driving the actual cluster, that they are growing fast. And you can also see that here. For instance, the ones that are selected here are responsible AI, the AI Act, transparency in AI, AI risk, AI management, explainable AI, and so on. So a lot of these ethical and governance related risks. You can also see it here that it's, if I would zoom out, that you can see that most of these ethical and AI related trends, they're quite new, right? They're actually only first inflection point for most of them was actually here between 18, 19, and 20. And you see that it's not really mature, but they're growing steadily, and then probably will have a second inflection point, because it's logical that this is kind of a follow-up causality of when AI technologies become more important. There are different trends or different discussions going on related to the AI team, or AI is going mainstream in general. So I'm still now at a macro level. What I didn't explain is that for all these trends, you can actually go to the lowest level and get a lot more of these insights. So maybe I'll just click on the first one. What does responsible AI mean for insurance? So again, I'm the analyst. What it gives me is objective data-driven trend scoring, which basically tells me, okay, responsible AI, today on a scale from 0 to 10, it's a 4.9, meaning it's not really a high trending trend, but it's already a medium trending trend. But it's really growing fast, apparently, over the course of a couple of years. And the forecasting algorithm tells me that it will move from a 4.9 to a 7.6 the next coming 0 to 2 years. So all of these combined metrics, again, mapped on insurance, tells me as a strategic analyst that I need to report to my VP strategy that we need to start exploring this, doing in-depth deep dives, assessing risks, opportunities, and really understanding how responsible AI could potentially impact insurance the next coming few years. So these are all these actual metrics you can actually just assess by looking at the visualization of this trend. So what happens is we couldn't find any signals on insurance in all that news that we monitor on insurance combined with responsible AI. And at some point, you start seeing a first inflection point, and year after year, month after month, there is news being written about responsible AI in insurance, and the forecasting algorithm forecasts that the most likely scenario will go up. So there will be more trending news about responsible AI in insurance. We can also map that onto geographies if you want. We have different types of insights that explain, for instance, in which data silos can we find most signals. Is it mostly in the business related news? Is it in the academic world? Is it at a societal level where you can play around how these trends are actually growing in specific data silos? We can link it up to startup databases, so you get all these inspirational startups that you can just click on. It would take you to the website of that specific startup, which we always link back to the industry if possible. And then, well, the underlying principle is that we monitor all this news. So it's real-time news coming in, trustworthy, contextualized sources about the trend. And then again, we also allow you to get summaries of all that news mapped onto your specific company, but you can equally deep dive. Let's say I only want to see some competitor news. So how are competitors coming in the headlines? What's being written again at a consultancy level? Are there, for instance, laws and regulation related type of articles that I need to worry about? And it's always summarizing all the news for you, referencing to where it has found that kind of information. So again, this is all automated in real time. You get a full deep dive of, in this case, about 55 or 60 trends that are impactful onto insurance. First of all, it's continuous, it's automated, and in real time, you get all that inspiration point to be able to give an analysis to your VP strategy. And again, I've tried to do a little bit the same. If you would report that out onto slides, it would mean that you say, okay, this is the broad scope of all kinds of AI trends that we have mapped onto our insurance business. The biggest themes you can read here. If we look at what are the top clusters versus the fast moving clusters, this is what this is the snapshot. If I would then zoom in onto one specific one, like I explained, the ethics in AI, what would you get is an explanation about what do ethics and AI actually mean from an impact perspective onto insurance. You can select or highlight a couple of these articles. You could actually see that most of these fast growing trends are quite new and quite new signals. And then you can actually highlight a couple of these drivers that are making up of why ethics and governance in AI is more of an important theme to assess the next coming years. And then equally, like I just showed you, you can zoom in onto one of these trends, build a similar slide where you say, okay, responsible AI, this is the data-driven scoring. This is why these trends matter to us. If we go a level deeper and within insurance, we map it onto health insurance, life insurance, you can see that in some cases, you can actually benchmark in which of these sub-industries that trend is actually more impactful. You can also see short-term mention growth over the course of 6 months. Some other inspiration points, some data points like converging trends, benchmarking industries, benchmarking regions, and so on. So this is the kind of typical analysis that you would get if you would do technology scouting. And that concludes me to the final Supercharge use case. It's about giving you instant strategic briefs with our AI analysts. So let me go back to here. If I would say, okay, this is about 55 AI trends impacting on insurance, and you need an instant brief on that. And as an analyst, you don't want to go to each and every individual of these trends, extract all the news, and create a strategic brief. This is really where the intelligence layer of our AI analyst kicks in, because what this does is it's actually now scanning your specific trend board. So all these AI trends on your trend board, it's looking within insurance, which ones of that board are considerably rising. So the top rising trends in your board equally combined with the top declining trends in your board. And then it will give you a list of specific trends that show considerable growth over the last couple of months. So here you can really say to your VP strategy, hey, I've monitored all these trends the last 6 months. This is your top 15 rising trends. And if we would zoom in onto these specific trends, well, these are like the strategic brief questions that you can use. And we have these predefined strategic questions populating all kinds of strategic analysis that you might have. So for instance, responsible AI, okay, it has grown considerably over the course of 6 months. Why does that really matter to us? You would get a management summary specifically for that trend. You would be able to see what's really happening at a global level. So what's really happening with responsible AI linked to insurance. Go even a level deeper, understand some use cases of how responsible AI is actually demonstrating itself within the industry. You could really do some analysis on what does that now really mean to you, all that change, and what's the impact, what are potential risks, what are potential opportunities. And this is all fed. The narrative is technology here is large language models to basically summarize all the news. But what is being fed is our own data points, our own statistics, our own news to be able to give you that contextualized insight, specifically linking it back to your company. Now, this is now just for one of these trends, but you can probably understand that for all these trends, you would have different strategic briefs or strategic insights, which is instant in real time, and you can basically just copy paste that onto slides and go give your VP strategy the information he needs to shine at an executive level or at a boardroom in minutes. And this is really where this strategic brief is fueling the third case about fueled by our AI analysts. Sorry. Now, again, the kind of briefs that we are trying to answer here is the trend is changing, yes, but what's changing that you need to know about? What does that mean to you? So how can you act upon it? And then how could you respond actually? What are like inspirational strategic moves that you can take? What are like potential scenarios that you need to think about the evolution of that trend? And this is again all built into our specific AI model. I'm not sure about timing. I think I have about 10 or 15 minutes. This was the last of the presentation. I hope it was informative, where you can see the added value of having these kinds of new breed of AI analysts and AI technologies packed into an online platform, supporting all kinds of strategic research activities like horizon scanning, technology scouting, instant strategic briefs. Again, if you were interested and you liked what you saw and it was inspirational, please feel free to contact me or link up with me on LinkedIn.